Let's throw some jabs.
The fight starts now!
All right, Ade, Dillian Whyte got back into the win column last weekend, picking up a close decision win over Jermaine Franklin. It was far from impressive, but it does line up Whyte to take on Anthony Joshua in a rematch at some point next year. You were ringside for Whyte against Franklin. As you project a Whyte-Joshua rematch, is that a competitive fight?
No, I think it's the simple answer, and it's difficult even to project it. I was, as you say, working on the event, and I spoke to Eddie Hearn prior to that fight, and I was like, okay, what does Whyte need to do to get the AJ fight? Is a W enough? And he openly said, no, it's not. He needs to look really good. We need to see that Whyte's still at that top table, that elite level of heavyweights. And unfortunately, we've not seen a good Dillian Whyte performance now for some time. It's been a while, right? Even if you think of the Povetkin win, that wasn't a good performance. Povetkin was bad. He's been knocked out by Tyson Fury, knocked out by Povetkin, struggled against Oscar Rivas. So it's been a while. So I think it's a difficult sell. I do. I mean, look, it can still happen because AJ sells so many tickets over here. And there is some sort of history between the two and some sort of animosity. But in terms of selling it as a competitive fight, no. Look, I like Jermaine Franklin, but I was hearing about the sparring he's having with Daniel Dubois. Shane McGuigan was open about it, and he didn't do very well in that sparring. So I expected Dillian Whyte to run through Jermaine Franklin, and for it to be a majority decision, and for a lot of people to think that Jermaine Franklin could have nicked it, you can't sell me the AJ fight. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I scored the fight a draw. Didn't mind Whyte getting the win, though I thought 116, 112 two times was far too wide for Dillian Whyte. But, I mean, Jermaine Franklin was handpicked to get bulldozed in this fight. I mean, it was the first fight for Whyte after that knockout loss to Anthony Joshua, and Matchroom badly wanted Whyte to look great, so there was some marketability to a rematch with Anthony Joshua. Instead, we got a Whyte that looked all of his 35 years. He struggled in there. He didn't look as quick or powerful as he has in some of his previous fights. He got clipped, I believe, in the 6th round by Jermaine Franklin, who has a number of knockouts, but doesn't have anyone anywhere close to the name of Whyte on his resume. He's a guy that's fought one time in the last 3 years before facing Dillian Whyte, who had a 7-week training camp for this fight. So I think this was all being lined up for Dillian Whyte to look great, and he didn't. And I don't believe that he's going to improve over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, that they make the AJ fight. I mean, I think AJ, as long as he is something close to the guy that we saw in the rematch against Alexander Usyk, is just going to walk right through Dillian Whyte, because I don't think Dillian has what he used to have anymore. And I want to get your take on this. I don't think Dillian Whyte and Buddy McGirt were on the same page during that fight, because Buddy McGirt was begging Dillian Whyte to follow one game plan, and Dillian Whyte was following basically another. Buddy McGirt, who was well known throughout boxing as being a staunch advocate for the jab, could be heard all fight long screaming into the ring to use the jab. He was pushing for that shell defense. Whyte was not really going to that all that often either. So maybe they improve over the next few months if they continued working together, but that did not seem like a pairing that connected all that well in their first fight together.
Yeah, agreed. I remember seeing Callum Smith and his first fight under Buddy McGirt, and you could see those improvements. The aggression was there, and he was going back to the corner, and you could see him listening to what Buddy was asking him to do and doing it. With Dillian Whyte, I knew Dillian Whyte was just going to revert to type. And that could be a case of he's not in sync yet with Buddy, and that could take a few fight camps. But I don't think at 35 you're going to change much of Dillian Whyte. And I don't think you should try and change too much. Dillian Whyte's a brawler, very much like Derek Chisora. What you see is what you get, brawl. But we didn't even see any brawling on Saturday. Jermaine Franklin was there to be hit. He stood in the pocket with him. And Dillian Whyte, I don't know if it's a case of didn't trust his gas tank. Maybe didn't trust his chin. Didn't want to brawl. And I was like, well, what's going on? And look, to be fair to Dillian Whyte, you've just been knocked out in your last fight. You've been knocked out in your last 2 or 3 fights. It's a new trainer. You're under pressure. So maybe there is that hesitation to pull the trigger. But again, you're in there against an easier opponent, as you said, to get the AJ fight. And even not to get the AJ fight, to get other fights. Hrgovic is out there. Zheli Zhang's out there. Sell yourself. And he didn't do it. And I think it's a case of everyone goes back to the drawing board. I mean, AJ was there Saturday night, and he was there to kind of maybe sell it. If Dillian Whyte looked good, AJ maybe steps in the ring and you do a little face-to-face. Nothing happened. Everyone kind of went home and evacuated the building very quickly because it was a poor performance. And I mean, if you're Jermaine Franklin, you're upset you lost, but he can open himself up to other fights in the UK. If it's Dillian Whyte, and if you're Buddy McGirt, more importantly, you're thinking, okay, maybe we need one more around that level before we kind of dip our toes back into the real elite heavyweights, because I think he's really far off it.
Well, I think, Ade, with McGirt, like, they have to have a frank conversation about how Dillian Whyte wants to fight. Because Buddy McGirt, in a way, in the last couple of years, has started to look to me a little bit like how Emmanuel Stewart looked, towards the end of his training career, where he'd take on some guys and he'd improve them. He'd make them better and push them to another level. Buddy McGirt took over Sergey Kovalev, and even though Kovalev got knocked out by Canelo, he was following the Buddy McGirt game plan, just jab, 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 and he was having some success. If you look at the scorecards, it was pretty close in that fight against Canelo Alvarez. You mentioned Callum Smith, who is kind of built to be a Buddy McGirt fighter, like tall, rangy, good jab, can follow it up with a titanic right hand. That's an excellent pairing. Dillian Whyte, to me, should be a good Buddy McGirt fighter. He's got an impossibly long reach. Like, if he uses that jab, he is going to be able to be effective. But it just didn't seem to me like during that fight that Dillian wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be kind of the brawler who threw big right hands and left hooks to the body, and he landed some of them, but he didn't seem like he had the discipline to stay behind the jab as often as Buddy McGirt clearly wanted him to. Because, listening in between rounds, like, Buddy was imploring him to do one thing, and Dillian, more often than not, went out and did something else.
What scared me, Chris, even though he didn't, and you're right, he didn't listen to Buddy, I'm still expecting Dillian as, again, an elite level heavyweight to just go through the gears yourself. Okay, I'm not going to listen to you in the corner. I'm going to get this job done how I get this job done. And there were times in there where I thought, okay, this looks pretty easy for Dillian. I'm expecting you now to kind of really put your foot down and start to show that you are way above a Jermaine Franklin. Every time he tried to fire back, credit to Jermaine Franklin, he fired back as well. And I'm like, okay, Dillian, you're a lot bigger than Jermaine. Jermaine's not a big heavyweight, right? I mean, his stature, he weighs a lot, but you look at his frame, he's not a big guy. Okay, Dillian, you're at home, it's your home crowd, really impress. And you're right, he got rocked. I think it was the end of round 9, he got rocked and he was saved by the bell. And after that, he seemed to lose any sort of hope of, okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy, apart from the last 20 seconds of round number 12. Overall, and I was honest on the broadcast, I thought it was a disappointing performance from Dillian. And I'm not quite sure what you do. Again, he's 35. He's still a big name. They didn't sell that many tickets, so is he still a big name? Is he still a big draw? I'm not quite sure, but maybe you wait to see what happens with Chisora and Fury and you go the Chisora route, because I don't know if you go the AJ route again. And my worry for Dillian is that if he does go any other name, I think he gets beat by any of the guys in the top 10. I really do. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Dillian next. But overall, not a great performance from someone that thinks he's at the top table of the heavyweight division.
I think it's still a reasonably marketable fight, at least more marketable than anyone on that level that Anthony Joshua could face early next year. But, in the aftermath of this win over Jermaine Franklin, no one can really believe it's going to be competitive.
Yeah, what do you do? If you're Eddie, in terms of a bums on seats kind of thing, what do you do? Do you go Otto Wallin? Do you do that? Or do you do Dillian Whyte, where it's going to be a bit spicy at the press conference? The face-off's going to be interesting. It's going to sell a bunch of, and I'm guessing it will be on DAZN pay-per-view. It'll sell a bunch of pay-per-views. Do you do that, or do you do AJ Hrgovic, AJ Otto Wallin? You probably go AJ Whyte. And if you want AJ to knock someone out, and that's what we all want to see, right? AJ knocking someone out. It's been a long time since he's done that. Then I think you've got the perfect opponent in Dillian Whyte, who's open for everything. So I think AJ will probably look at it and be rubbing his hands there, thinking, okay, you want me to fight him? Again, if we see AJ that was half as good as he was against Usyk, he gets the job done. And I think AJ will probably welcome a Dillian Whyte fight, because I think AJ stops him again like he did